Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Coming up on our Game Day segment this week will be Michigan football and basketball beat writer Tony Garcia from the Detroit Free Press. He'll be along in just a few minutes. First, a few of my thoughts to get us started. The college football season is officially over now. Yeah, we know who won the Natty, and good for them, but now it's time to turn our attention to next season. Sharon and staff have been busy on the recruiting trail the last few weeks, very busy. They still have an eye on the spring portal, and spring practice is, believe it or not, just a few weeks away. Today we're turning our attention to Michigan hoops, and deservedly so. To say it's been a surprising year so far is an understatement. Dusty May has made an impression on all of college basketball with his first Michigan team. As we wrap up January, we are still firmly in the Big Ten race, and barring a collapse, we will be dancing in March. I think by now most of us are familiar with all of the new names and faces, like our 7-foot centers Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf. Golden followed Dusty up from Florida, and Danny Wolf transferred from Yale. They have become the face of Michigan basketball this year, and they are having great seasons. My guest today says it's rare you see two big men on the floor together as starters, and that's for good reason. It usually doesn't work like this. Joining us with his thoughts on that and more is beat writer Tony Garcia from the Detroit Free Press. So stay with us. Joining us this morning on the Game Day edition of our show to talk some Michigan hoops for once is Tony Garcia from the Detroit Free Press. Tony, great to have you on the show with us.
Yes, Michael, thank you. Good to be here. Hope you're staying warm where you are.
Well, trying to, but hey, there's a lot going on with Michigan hoops to warm us up. It's that time of the year, and of course, Michigan's off until Friday night. Coming off an overtime loss to Minnesota last week, then an overtime win at home against Northwestern on Sunday. I guess once again proving, Tony, there are no easy days or nights in the Big Ten, are there?
Certainly not. And I would say the evening that they have coming up, Friday night in Mackey Arena in West Lafayette is the toughest of the bunch. But no, I mean, I think you said it best. Michigan was tied for first place when they went to winless Minnesota. They were up 11 in the second half, and as we've seen them be a little prone to do when they're doing their not good thing, they gave up a double-digit lead, and then just a 40-foot buzzer beater by Dawson Garcia when it looked like it was going to go to a second OT, and that's why you can't let teams hang around. But then again, Dusty May said it preseason. He's like, look, if we're in one-possession, two-possession games, it doesn't matter what team we're playing. You're going to be right around 500. That's just the way the ball bounces if you're in the nature of these tight games. And then you look a couple days later, another OT game against Northwestern, a better Northwestern team, but it's at home, and you do just enough in what was a choppy, sloppy, free throw infested game. But a win's a win, and Northwestern can really cause some problems, especially for what Michigan likes to do offensively. So they were pleased to get away with that one. But yeah, I mean, those teams are combined 3-11. In the Big Ten. So that just goes to show what this league is like.
Yeah, it's been a little choppy, but here we are late January. Michigan 14-4 overall, 6-1 in Big Ten play right now. You know, all things considered, when this season started, we didn't see this coming. It's been an incredible start for the team, hasn't it?
Oh, it really has. It really has. With 4 losses, all away from home by a combined 8 points, all against Power 4 teams. So, I guess you could still say the Minnesota loss is probably the closest thing to a bad loss. I would call it a bad loss now for this team. But again, we are now using it through the lens we're currently looking at through, right? As you said, preseason, if anybody had said, oh yeah, Michigan's going to be 14-4 and 6-1 in the league going into Purdue, even the staff would have been like, yeah, sign us up for that right now. So there's no doubt they're ahead of schedule. From where they thought they might be, but they are pretty close to where they hoped they could be.
Yeah, and when the season started, there were a lot of things we didn't know what
we were going to see. One of them was, from all of our days of watching basketball, you don't expect to see two bigs on the floor all the time, Golden and Wolf, because it just doesn't work well in most situations, or we haven't seen that over the years, an entire game as starters. But man, they sure are playing off each other well and seem to be getting even more comfortable together, don't they?
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. And I mean, this is credit to May and staff for the vision, right? That, I mean, a lot of people in the basketball world might just say, oh, 2 7-footers, they both played center for their team. Do we want one or do we want the other? But I mean, there's a difference between a position and a player, right? I mean, these are actual players and real people, and you watch their game and you see that Danny Wolf, I mean, he can put the ball on the deck. He can handle it. He can cross it over. He's got enough height and vision to see over the defenders. He can play 5 out, and he can be on the outside, and then that can leave room for Golden on the inside. Or he can play the center if Golden's out, like not in the game. I mean, there were just a ton of amalgamations and ways to mix and match this. And now, that said, it was not always easy. I mean, there is a reason why it's difficult to play 2 7-footers on the court at the same time. It changes the spacing, and both of them are now in semi to fully new roles. So they're sort of integrating and working through that. And then, I mean, it was, and frankly, early in the season, Vlad was just kind of missing shots, right?
Yeah.
They weren't force feeding him a ton. I mean, he only took more than 6 shots twice in his first 6 games, right? I mean, 1 shot, 5 shots, 5 shots, 7 shots, and he only scored double figures 1 out of those first 6 games. Since then, in the past 12 games, he has scored in double figures every time. He's averaging more than 20 a game per that stretch, more than 23 a game in Big Ten play. And so, I mean, they just, it took some time, right?
Yeah.
This isn't going to happen overnight. And now they are, I mean, they're really rolling.
Yeah, they have a real chemistry going now. And Golden, as you said, he couldn't hit a bunny, it seemed, early in the season. But no one has surprised me more than Danny Wolf. I know when we picked him up, everyone said, hey, that's a nice pickup. And, you thought, man, how's this going to work? But a 7-footer who plays all over the floor, handles the ball sometimes too much. Did you have any thoughts, any inkling coming into the season that we might see what we have from him?
Here's what I will tell you. I got the chance to go into the facility over the summer, spend a morning with some people behind the scenes. Really, it was with Matt Aldred, the strength and conditioning coach. And he actually put me through the ringer, put me through a workout. I was trying to see exactly what this new staff was about, their philosophies and those sorts of things. And this coach didn't give me permission that day. I didn't ask him. I didn't think that much of it that day to mention him by name, so I can't say who it was. But someone on staff around the program, and I was asking them who they kind of this same question, like who are they most surprised by? And they said, this Danny Wolf guy is something that nobody is going to be ready for. They're like, we thought we had something, and we had no idea we had this. So based on that, since the summer, people who'd ask me, I'm like, I'm telling you, I hadn't seen it I hadn't seen it firsthand, but I'm like, they are really confident about what they got with this Danny Wolf thing. They really think they unlocked something. And then Aldred, the strength and conditioning coach, one of the things he was working on him with is he is very big into individualized player-specific training, right? Mm-hmm. Not just, a basketball player is a basketball player or a center is a center. So, I mean, he and Danny were really getting after it, working on lateral quickness, working on, on those sort of defensive things, because if you're going to be playing 4, you're going to have to be able to defend someone who's 6'7" and can cross you over and is going to be a little bit shorter than you. You're not just a center guarding a 5 anymore. And so I would say for everything he's done offensively, which has been great, and although the turnovers, I mean, it's something you just have to live with at this point because of all the positives he generates. Where he's underrated, and Vlad was saying this after the Northwestern game, is his defense. I mean, and I was watching a couple possessions. I mean, his ability to switch, to use his length, to go under screens, but still not let people get a shot off because he's just so tall. He really affects things on both sides of the court.
Well, there's even talk now he could be a first-round draft pick this year, and you've seen a lot of good ones come and go here, but do you think he is NBA ready?
Yeah, no, I do. I do think he is. Now, I mean, it's not luck. I mean, Michigan's had recent NBA picks like Jet Howard and Kobe Bufkin who went in the lottery, and they're still not like affecting the NBA on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah.
But so you can't, just because you're in the first round doesn't mean you aren't going to do anything. And then there's also guys who've gone later in rounds and been more effective. I mean, the Wagners were taken earlier in the draft, but just throughout Hardaway or whoever, and Burke's not a sure thing, right? Like, so just because you're drafted somewhere, but to make a long answer even longer, I do think he's sorry about that. I do think he's a first round talent, just because, I mean, you just got to trust what your eyes see, right?
Yeah.
He is 7 feet tall. He can shoot. He can pass. He can put the ball on the floor. It's a modern NBA. He is exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah,
I'd almost be surprised if he didn't go first round.
Yep. I think I would at this point too. Well, guard play and that rotation, it took a while to mesh, and we expected it would. But when I look at the rotation that we have, Trey Donaldson, I think he's just been solid. Do you like what we're getting from him? From
Trey, I would say yes. I'd say you can kind of live with what you're getting from Trey right now. It is. I find it to be a little bit microwave-ish.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like it comes in spurts throughout the game, right? But every day, every game, when you look up, he's kind of done the things that you expect him to do or hope he would do. And I mean, really, he has better than a 2-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. And so that's really where I start. 47% from the field, 42% from three. I mean, I guess when I break it down like that, yeah. I mean, he's doing what you'd hoped he would do.
Yeah, and there really isn't a true point guard on the floor this year. It hasn't mattered yet. But if you want the ball in one guy's hand at crunch time, I'd have to say it's going to be Donaldson, isn't it?
It has been. I wonder if they go away from that, because he had a look for a win at the end of regulation against Minnesota and fell, right, and missed it, didn't get a good look off. He had a look at the end of regulation against Northwestern. He got a better look. He got to the rim, but he missed it again. And it is escaping me. But I can't help but feel there was a third earlier in the year. It might have been Oklahoma after the 4-point play, I believe, when they had one more. I mean, they've had so many of these close games. Like the Arkansas game as well was finished as a 2-point game. But I believe it was Oklahoma. I think he's 0 for 3 on game-winning or game-tying attempted shots at the rim. Now, he's gotten a couple good looks. One, he kind of fell. What I do find interesting is when we asked Dusty May this preseason who he thought kind of the guy would be, the answer was Roddy Gale Jr. At the time. But I think the way he's just shooting the ball, I just don't think they can rely on that. I mean, now when he gets to the rim, he's finishing at a pretty good rate. But from outside, Gale is struggling. And so Donaldson is the closest. He is their point guard, but they say they play positionless basketball, so they don't have a point guard, is what they try to believe. But he is the guy with the ball. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's because of Wolf's turnover rate and Donaldson is turning it over significantly less. I think they might go with one of these 4 or 5 ball screens that have just been so difficult to defend in one of these late game situations. That's probably what I would do, since the next time, since the last 3 have not worked the first way. But I am not Dusty May. I am not. If they're getting the look they want, they're getting the look they want, right? So that's their call.
Well, the offense as a whole has been, surprisingly potent so far. And do you think, though, as a group, they've hit their ceiling, or is this a group that can get better as the season progresses?
I would say no, because Dusty May said they had not hit their ceiling, and that was after they put up 91 against Washington, and they had gone 89, 112, 85, 94, 91. And then they had this last week where they only scored 81 and 80. So they kind of took a step back a little bit, sort of, not really. But they just didn't have their crispest week. And May said they weren't at their peak before. So I'm going to say no. I mean, there's definitely another level to reach, because we haven't seen it all together. Right. I mean, right now they're number 14 KenPom, and they're doing a ton of things really well. They've dipped a little bit. They're only number 3 in the nation in 2-point percentage and 3 in effective field goal percentage. They were leading the country before, just a couple off nights against Minnesota and Northwestern. But there hasn't been the night where not only are they not turning it over, but they're hitting shots, right? Like
Yeah.
11 turnovers in 45 minutes against Northwestern is not a bad rate, but they shot terribly. And they were like, I don't have the number in front of me. Like, I think 22 of 61. I mean, they were like 35%, and they barely won that game and just had to scrape by. And then obviously against Minnesota, they lost it. So they clearly didn't put everything together. So there will be a night where they hit 51% of their threes and turn it over 9 times, and they are going to run somebody out of the gym by like 30 points. They're due for one of those. It almost feels like, no, I'm not calling that for Friday, but they got, I mean, it's a tough schedule coming up too. So I'm not sure when that happens, but I think they're kind of due for one of those.
Well, it might just be me, but as good as this team is and as smooth as it is at times, it can also be just incredibly sloppy for stretches. You know, the ball security and the turnovers, some of it, as you said, we're going to have to live with. But either it is what it is, or, you know, you can clean it up a little. But I think with this stretch, especially coming up in February, where it's going to get real, that ball security has to be better, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I was surprised that when Dusty May was asked, like, the number one thing he wanted to improve, and I mean, I've been asked, we in the media have been sort of asking him these things periodically throughout the weeks, and pretty frequently turnovers had been like, he's like, sometimes he'd be like, well, isn't it obvious? Like, and that's when they were turning it over 18 times. Now that's not what he said. Now he said defensive rebounding and just overall physicality. So I think that means he is confident. It is trending in the right direction. It is starting to be cleaned up. But you're absolutely right in that if this is where the floor, I mean, their ceiling is wonderful, but if the floor remains down here, you just can't. You can feel good about any given night in March, but you also know that it can end. And yes, of course, that's the way it is for every team, but even more susceptibility, right? When you're having these level of self-inflicted wounds. And so part of that is Wolf, I mean, handling the ball more than he had, and in different ways. Part of it is, I mean, all of those minutes leaders outside of Namari are new faces. And now, at what point in the season are you no longer new, right? You've all been together 6 months. Yeah. You've been together since the summer. It is time that these things clean up. But there's no doubt about it. Any night you turn the ball over 15 times, you're going to be fortunate to come away with a win.
Amen. Well, 6-1 in Big Ten play entering this week on Friday, as you mentioned a few minutes ago. Big test in West Lafayette against number 11 Purdue. And man, it's just never easy at Mackey. And that is it's going to be a fun one to watch, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And in case Michigan fans did not have enough animus for the Buckeyes, we don't need to mention what happened on Monday on the gridiron. Yeah. They did Michigan absolutely no favors going in there and pulling off a stunner on Tuesday night. Yeah. I was just shocked, completely shocked. That's really bad news bears for Michigan. Now, maybe it's one of those things where, hey, Purdue's in a little bit of a lull and they're kind of down for that. Every team goes through it for 3 games at some point in the year. I've just seen it so many times through even like the strongest of like the Izzo days, right? I mean, there's just that stretch where you're gonna, and maybe Purdue, they're trying to figure something out, and this is the beginning of a dip. But I didn't see that coming into this game where they'd won 7 straight and they looked like they were rolling, and Braden Smith, he is the real deal. He averages he leads the Big Ten in assists, 9 a game, he has a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, and he still scores 15 a game. I don't know if he's 50, 40, 90, but it feels like he's always close. He's 42, 40, 85. Yeah. Trey Kaufman-Renn has really been their story. How patient he was staying there for these 3 years behind Edey. And he was averaging 4 points, 6 points. Now it's 18 points a game on 60% shooting. Yeah. It's just like another one off the conveyor belt. So Painter's going to Painter, Mackey's going to Mackey. Michigan has to play its A game. There are days where you can win with a B- game. Nothing short of an A game is I don't see would get this done.
Well, whatever happens on Friday, Monday it's back home to close out the month against Penn State. And then you begin a February that is, it's going to be brutal to say the least, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. I think so. I think it starts. I mean, February starts right at Rutgers.
Yeah.
We're talking after Penn State, and then you got at home. It's Oregon, who's top 15 in the country, and at Rutgers playing. I mean, I still reference it as the RAC. It is Jersey Mike's Arena, but we all know it as the RAC. That is a tough place to play, especially. I mean, little Saturday afternoon tip, Fox. You got. I mean, as soon as that calendar turns too, there's just something about it when things start ramping up for those matinees on a weekend in New York. Then Oregon, at Indiana, right? Dusty May's homecoming. Purdue again. Then you got the rivals back to back, Ohio State and Michigan State. Before, and then maybe a little bit of a lull, but then you got to close with Illinois, Maryland, and then you travel to Breslin on their senior day. And I think that could determine it all. If Michigan is still hanging around, because MSU's starting to gain a little separation now.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I didn't need to go through the whole schedule, but just it's like, where's the off night?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe home Rutgers, February 27th. You chalk that one up as a win right now, but short of that, any of these are, and home Penn State, but they just played MSU again, really tough in Breslin. So I don't know.
Well, no doubt February is going to prove whether this team is a Big Ten contender or not. And there's going to be some losses in there. Hopefully not a collapse, but at this point, the way the team is playing, they at least look like an NCAA tournament team, don't they?
Oh, yeah. I think it's well beyond that. I think this is a team that could be well seeded in the NCAA tournament. I mean, you just kick yourself when you look back. I mean, as you say, Michael, everybody's going to lose a game.
Yeah.
But sometimes you lose games when it's just not your night, right? Michigan hasn't had a full just debacle. 4 losses by 8 points. If you could even and of course they have wins they do have some single digit wins, right? I mean, 4 points against Northwestern, 2 points Iowa, 3 points Wisconsin. So a few have gone in their favor as well of these close games. But man, if you just pick any one of those games, right? Say it's a neutral court Oklahoma, who's a top 20 team. Say it's Minnesota and you're still 7-0 in the Big Ten. If you have either of those and you're 15-3 right now, I mean, I think you're talking about a team that's like a 3 seed. And so now if you steal this one in Mackey, I think you're right back on that. I think you're on that 4 seed line. And because the Big Ten is so difficult, Michigan, I think Michigan ends somewhere the upper, they could climb to a 2 if they win the league, but they could fall to maybe a 6-7 if they go 13-7 in the league, right? Like they really drop both to Purdue, 1 to MSU, another one you don't see coming, and then an additional, right? So, but certainly they're well positioned to be in the tournament, barring a collapse, and feel good about making a run while they're there.
Well, final question before we let you get away, Tony. This has been, as we've been talking about, a fun team to watch so far this year. Dusty May has done a phenomenal job. I didn't expect this kind of a start. No one did. What are your impressions of the job he's done and the program that he's building up to this point?
Man, you definitely saved the best for last, and I'm going to try to not go on too long because there's frankly not enough good things you could say about Dusty May, staff, program, culture, turnaround at this point. I don't need to belabor the days that were in the previous 2 years, but I don't think unless you were around the program, anybody can truly wrap their mind around just how bad things had gotten. Some people within push back on that. That's my read on it. And that's my read based on what people inside have told me, a good handful of people. Now, there's another faction that say it wasn't that bad. We still had belief and X, Y, and Z. But because I'm not inside every day, I have to I'm taking everyone at face value. based on this turnaround, I mean, and I just it was toxic. It was very bad in the previous years. I mean, all the way down to media availabilities with no accountability, no transparency, things on Zoom, people who are supposed to be allowed at practice were, and I'm not talking media, I'm talking program people, were not there for years. Like, it was so bad. And now it could not be more of a polar opposite. Everybody seems very well connected with it internally, even though these coaches come from all different places.
Yeah.
There's, I mean, FAU, St. Mary's, you name it. With Big Ten backgrounds, with, they got GAs from Dmitry Fedosov, who from Russia, he's like a security blanket for Vlad Golden. That was a bit of a plug. I have a lengthy feature story coming out this week on Vlad Golden that I think people will appreciate, with his story, which is just remarkable. And it's all about these things. It's about Dusty. I mean, he didn't come to Ann Arbor for the weather, right? I mean, this guy, he passed up on the NBA, and then he left Boca Raton, Florida to follow his coach, right? And when his previous coach, Chris Beard, left Texas Tech, he didn't go to Texas and with him, right? I mean, he went to FAU, and he loves this guy, and everybody loves this guy. And the numbers don't lie. I mean, look at the recruiting, look at the wins, and this is just year one, right? And it's a brand of basketball that is enjoyable to watch. I think you've said that multiple times, and it's already come with winning. I think had they just made the tournament this year, you could have chalked that up as a win. But the fact that is so quickly feels like a baseline, and that Michigan is, I no doubt put them in the top 5 teams in the Big Ten. It's, in my mind, it's Michigan in no order. It's Michigan State, Michigan, Purdue, Wisconsin, and Oregon. And Michigan is absolutely in that group. And Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
They might be the best of the bunch. So those 6. And so to be in that group this quickly, is just remarkable. So everything he's done, I don't say I support, but I could if it's a program, if this is my program and I'm a fan of this program, I'm a fan of all the things that I have been able to watch and see and understand. That's how I want my program being run.
And what I think a lot of Michigan fans like is that there's someone else that really likes Dusty, and that's Coach Beilein. And he got the big blessing from Coach B from the get-go. And for Michigan fans who've been lamenting what's been happening with the program since Coach B left, this is a gift from the basketball gods, because this is the kind of program, it seems like, at least right now, that Coach B ran when he was here.
It is. I did not get the privilege of covering those programs up close. I wasn't here yet, but I did see them from afar, and I covered programs who had to deal with them. And oh yeah, you knew exactly what you were getting from a John Beilein team. And now in my role, I've gotten to know John. Salt of the earth, man. I put Dusty May, cut from the same cloth, just a basketball. Someone who, just eats, lives, breathes, drinks this stuff, is kind and welcoming when doing so, which is how you are able to knit and foster such a good culture. And I do want to say this about before, and then I'll get out of here, about even the in between, right? Ward Manuel should get some credit for this hire, right? Nobody likes to give him any credit. They had to strike while the iron was hot. Louisville was out there, and yes, Indiana didn't end up filling it, but if Dusty May didn't see a job that he really, really liked, he could have just held for another year, waited until Mike Woodson fell into the abyss and taken over his alma mater. Michigan knew what they had. And John Beilein, you said it. He went on those trips to Florida. He was there. He's down there. They all met up, and they had a 3-prong approach with Dusty to explaining to him how he can build a winner, and what John thought and what Ward thought. But the previous regime, there was reason to believe, or a reason to hope initially, why something like that could work. A program guy, a recruiter, and then when it stopped working, Ward cut it. He got rid of his buddy. I think that there were 2 horrible years. Horrible years. You weren't going to fire him after one bad year off when you had gone Sweet 16 and Elite 8 the previous 2. And because they just missed the tournament and were a big letdown with Jet and Hunter and them. And then last year, bottom out, and you pull the ripcord. I don't know what else, of course it was horribly frustrating for those years. I don't know what else there was to do because it worked at first. As soon as it stopped, you went the other direction, and now it's working again. That's my sentiment on how that went down. But make no mistake, it was awful when it was happening. I am not saying it wasn't.
I think everyone agrees, and we're in a good place right now, heading into February, and of course Mackey on Friday. It's a good time. So with us today to talk Michigan hoops has been Tony Garcia from the Detroit Free Press. And Tony, it's been great having you with us for the first time. Hopefully here in the coming weeks we'll get you back on and talk about what's going on.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, Michael. We'll have to make that work.
On Quick Hits today, thanks again to Tony Garcia from the Detroit Free Press for being our guest today. He'll be back with us soon, I'm sure of that. As you heard Tony and I discuss, Dusty May and his team are ready to see where they are with a road test on Friday night at number 11 Purdue in West Lafayette at Mackey Arena. The game will be on Fox with an 8 p.m. tip-off. We'll be back at home on Monday against Penn State. Then it gets real in February with a brutal schedule, but it should be fun. As we're getting this show published, Kim Barnes-Rico and her team are in Minnesota for a battle of 2 ranked teams. The Gophers at number 23, with Michigan a notch below at number 24. Michigan will also host Michigan State on Saturday in its annual Clash at Chrysler contest, which is also a maze-out. Tip is set for 1 p.m. and can be seen live on the Big Ten Network. Hockey is up in Madison for a pair this weekend. Friday's action starts at 7 p.m. and can be seen on Big Ten Plus. The puck drops at 8:30 on Saturday evening, and the game will be televised by BTN. Michigan is 14-9-1 overall, 8-6 in Big Ten play. Number 18 Michigan Wrestling, 4-2 overall, 2-1 in the Big Ten, will kick off a 3-match homestand with 2 ranked Big Ten opponents this weekend at Chrysler Center. U of M will host number 7 Nebraska at 6 p.m. on Friday, and number 24 Indiana at 2 p.m. on Sunday. Friday's duel will be broadcast live on the Big Ten Network. A reminder to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and please comment or review on the show wherever you get your podcast from, and I thank you in advance for that. That does it for another show. We'll be back next week with more of the latest news on this very busy Michigan winter sports scene. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure you tell your Wolverine family and friends about the show. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!